As we mentioned earlier, there are 10 key principles of economic. They are centered around 3 pillars: how people make decisions, how people interact, and how the economy works as a whole. Let's start with how people make decisions. So the first principle of how people make decisions: people face trade-offs. People face trade-offs. All decisions we make in our life involve trade-offs. For example, going out with friends the night before your exam leaves less time for studying. Of course, now we don't have this at the moment, but before Corona pandemic, if you have an exam tomorrow and you decide to go out with your friends, this means that you are leaving less time for studying. Having more money to buy things requires working longer hours, which leaves less time for leisure. So when you spend money to buy things, which means if you want to have more money, it means that usually you need to work longer hours. And by working longer hours, in this case, maybe you have less time to spend with family. So trade-offs is about, it's about you need to give up something for something else. So here, if you want to spend your time to spend some time with your friends, it means you have less time for studying. If you want to have more time for working and gain more money, which means that you have less time for your family or to have fun with your friends. For example, for firms or for companies, protecting the environment requires resources that could otherwise be used to produce consumer goods. So this is also a trade-off. Companies or firms, they suffer from this issue because if you want, for example, to produce better products, that it is more friendly to the environment. So for example, you are a factory, you produces cars, you want maybe to produce electric cars, and by producing electric cars, it means that you need to spend more money in research and development. This money, you can use it in other things. Maybe you can produce normal cars that uses gasoline. And in this case, you have a trade-off, whether to spend this money on research and development or spend this money for producing normal cars. So here, people usually, any decision they make, they face this kind of trade-offs. So trade-offs here, as a word, if you want to put it in a simple word, means that you want to make a decision between two options, make a decision between two alternatives. One of the most important trade-offs that we face here is about society, is about between efficiency and equality. Efficiency and equality. What do you mean by this? Efficiency, when society gets the most from its scarce resources. I will give you a simple example, and it's about if we are in a classroom and we have, for example, 20 seats, and we have only 5 students in this classroom. Are we using our classroom efficiently? Is it efficient to have a classroom with 20 students and at the same time we have only 5 students? This means that we have 15 empty seats. So we are not using the classroom in an efficient way. But for example, if we have, for example, 19 students with a classroom that has about 20 seats, this means that we are using our classroom in a very efficient way. Same thing with a society. Does the society use its resources in an efficient way? Generally speaking, what we mean by resources here, so here we will give you some examples. For example, do people in the society, they have the best production Are we using the natural resources in the best way? Are we using technology in the best way? So this is what we mean by efficiency. For equality, it's about when prosperity is distributed uniformly among society's members. It means that the gap between rich and poor people, it is very, there is no big gap, so that the gap is small between rich and poor people. So society usually they face this trade-off between efficiency and equality. How does it work in this way? What we mean by a trade-off between efficiency and equality? Achieve greater equality, which means we try to distribute the income from, for example, from rich people to poor people. We could redistribute income from wealthy to poor. So that's what we mean by equality. But this probably reduces incentive, and this is an important word, incentive, to work or produce, and as a result, it may shrink the size of the economic pie. How does it work this way? So, for example, if I am a rich person and I am producing, for example, computers, and the government, they decided to, for example, to increase the taxes for my factory where I produce computers. So because of the taxes, it will cut some profit from my factory. So what I'm going to do is I'm trying to find the best interest for my company. So probably I will move my factory to another country, for example, let's say China or whatever, where the labor is cheaper or where the taxes are lower than in my home country. And in this way, if I'm moving my factory, which means that people of my country will not come to my factory and work. So in this case, I'm increasing the unemployment as a result of this, of moving my factory from the home country to another country. But for my business, it's good for my business. Why? Because it is more efficient. The decision I made is more efficient for my business because I will have more profit, less cheaper labor, and lower taxes, and maybe when I buy a land or I pay a rent for a land, it is cheaper and so forth. So it is more efficient for me. But for equality here, in this case, I will not pay more taxes for my home country. Maybe the government will use the taxes to help poor people or to make maybe more infrastructure for poor people. So this kind of trade-off, it is really a hard decision for the government and for the society as a whole.